Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the October 19th work session of the Croton Harmon Board of Education to order. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. All right, well, we will begin our evening this evening. We will have an update from KG&D on our facility plan. So I will turn it over to Ms. Carrington-Cohen to kick us off.
Okay, so I'd like to introduce Walt Hauser, our principal and lead architect with KG&D, Sarah Davis as well, and Susan Davidson, who will present some of our interior spaces and also give an overview of where we are in the project today.
Good evening, thanks for having me. And also like to say Kevin Sawyer is here, Triton Construction.
I'm hiding in plain sight.
My apologies,
Welcome.
they're gonna trade off throughout the presentation. My apologies, Kevin.
No worries.
Thanks for joining us, guys.
Yeah, good for me. So we really wanted to just give an update on the design, on the work that happened over the summer, as well as the progression of the design for the district-wide capital project and the athletic facilities work, and talk a little bit about next steps in the project, in the process. So over the summer, we completed a number of projects. The first one is the storm drainage work that happened at all three schools, or at both campuses. So Kevin, if you want to give a brief overview.
Yeah, sure. So as most of you, I hope know, there were a couple of construction projects that took place over the summertime. One of them was site work throughout a number of your school buildings in various areas, all infrastructure work that was needed. Completed on time over the summer. There were a couple of locations where some rock was found along the way, and so I believe there's some change proposals that will soon be to the board in regards to that. It's on the agenda for tonight. Wonderful. And once those are approved, then we can financially close the projects out. Currently, they're in the punch list and closeout stage. We figured that there's probably going to be another week or two left of doing that work, and then a request is going to be made from the architect to do a final walkthrough. And if all goes well, we hope to close those projects out next month. So Brad Hurst and the storm drainage was one part of that, and then the roofing project again went pretty well. There were financially, there were a couple of requests for some additional work to be done, which I do believe is with you also. But we didn't spend all the allowance money, so there's actually a credit coming back to the district. So we're doing that project for less than the bid amount. So really excited about that. And again, we have the warranties already in place for the roof, and we're currently working towards closing out all that paperwork, all that silly paperwork. There's a lot of it. And of course, working with KG&D to make sure everything is buttoned up nice and tight and move on to the next ones. So let's just talk.
Yeah, I would just like to say, we're pleased that we were able to get that work done this summer, which was replacement of the roof at the kindergarten wing at CET, the district office roof. And if you remember, the three prongs of the capital project were the district-wide roofing, the athletic and safety project, as well as the district-wide improvements of all three school buildings. And we were able to accelerate this portion of the roofing. We did all the roofing, we were able to accelerate this piece, and we will be rebidding the rest of the roofing shortly.
Yeah, that was.
If I could just add, so we had to accelerate this project, as you know, with the support of KG&D, and on-site, Triton had a representative, Ivan, who worked with us, who handled all of the contractors. We had some unforeseen circumstances with the, extreme amount of rock that we hit. So it was two projects that $2 million in total. But as you know, during the summer, we only have a few months, and because it was site work at each of the buildings, it was a little bit more complicated logistically. So thank you so much for your support throughout the project.
So athletic safety and security, just a quick update, has been submitted to SCD. So that was provided to SCD facilities planning in August. You may remember there has been a change in their review process since we started this project, or since the schedule was conceived. City has eliminated third-party review. The long and short is that means the queue, you're subject to the queue, which currently is in the 3 to 4 month range. So we expect review and comments back later this fall, towards the end of the calendar year, which will put us in good shape to bid this project in the beginning of 2024. So the work that's happening now, we'll talk a little bit in a little more detail. Has to do with estimating and cost control. So both KG&D and Triton have prepared detailed estimates on all phases of the work. Obviously, the roofing, we're not estimating at this point, but the fields and all the work of the buildings. So we're in the cost control process as we're waiting for it approved. But we can revisit that. Yes.
Question. You mentioned rock,
Yes.
and we know there's a lot of rock around here,
Mhm.
and a lot of places where there's not.
Mhm.
If I recall, the only place where that might become an issue, if I'm correct, is around the field.
Yeah.
Okay, really, we're not doing anything in any of the buildings as we have done in previous projects.
Correct.
How do you anticipate utilize or dealing with that potential?
Yeah.
When we did our work more than 20 years ago, we did a lot of test borings to come up with a thought of how much of an allowance we would provide, and that was not an accurate, in the end, an accurate.
Yeah.
Well, what are you thinking in that?
Sure. So we have done test borings. So we've done some geotechnical exploration in the area. The rock is most prevalent at the corners of the field, as you can imagine. So there's a very obvious rock bluff off one of the end zones, and then the other corner towards your storage equipment, towards the tennis courts. We know there's some rock present, and it dissipates, goes down as we get towards the middle of the field along the bank where the bleachers are going to go. You're absolutely right. We don't take enough borings to do a complete profile of the rock, and it may be that we find areas that are knobby or less knobby as we excavate. But it gives us a pretty good idea of where the pain points will be potentially, so that we can try to minimize excavation or in those areas. I would say the one potential would be utility trench, because the utility trenching is very specific where it goes ultimately. And we don't take a boring along every 10 feet of the utility trench. So typically we have included an allowance for rock removal in the bid, as well as unit prices. So the idea being, above and beyond what is shown in the documents and known to be there, we include some quantity of mass excavation rock, as well as some quantity of trench excavation for the unit price. So we say, let's include 100 yards of rock removal for trenches, and you tell us what the value of each yard is, and that way, if we need to add more, we can at the unit price, or we can take a credit back for unused allowances. So that's typically the way that's managed. The process of creating a full rock profile underneath the grade is quite expensive, and really is not a standard in which we would go after that.
Okay.
Project like this. Okay, Sarah, do you want to talk about the district-wide capital plans?
Thank you. Yes, I can do that. So the next portion of the trifecta project is the capital improvements. And so basically this one, again, we have already submitted to SCD, and that went in September. And as we mentioned about the field project, we're also going through the cost control and estimating process right now. And we're hoping that we can get that through SCD again in that 3 to 4 month span. So that would kind of be early 2024. Again, hoping to bid that around the same time so that we can get started in the late spring and early summer. And since we've seen you last, which was 4 months ago, maybe, we've actually had quite a few series of meetings with stakeholders, mostly at the kind of building level. And we had a few months back a grand meeting with all of the renderings that you've seen already, but we started to bring in all of these kind of material ideas and samples to help share with the team. And so we've kind of gone through and a few iterations of that and had these meetings together and have come up with these boards. And so that's what we're here to present to you tonight. And so with the help of Steve Davidson, we are going to walk you through pretty much 2 spaces of each school. Since we have such a large breadth of spaces that we've worked on, it would take us a day to go through them all, but we picked some of the highlights. And so we'll be doing 2 spaces at each school to show you tonight.
I think Kevin's gonna do schedule. quickly
Oh, we're
first.
gonna do that first. Okay. Yes, more important, the schedule.
Exciting stuff. What you have in front of you is, in blue is the design, well, it's the design and construction of the next phases that are coming up. As the KGD team mentioned, there's an anticipated entity review time in there. Bidding in, right after, is that 24, 25? 2025. So the work plan for 24 is district-wide various alts. You can see that in that kind of pink area in the middle. Along with the Spencer Field and the auditorium. And then in the summer of 25, you can see where a lot of the remaining balance of the work will take place, which is the cafeteria construction. That's going to be quite a complex project. And then the remaining balance of district-wide alter various work. So this is still in line with what we had projected with the group here in June. Some minor variations, but pretty much this, it's the same end timeline. And KG&D has done a tremendous job of keeping the design process moving at the anticipated rate to meet the goals that were originally intended when the bond first came out. So pleased with where we are overall with the design timeline. And, you know, as once we get through this next phase, which is going to be the estimating and review, and then the approval from SED and the bids. During that time, we will start to focus in more detail about logistics and phasing of how we're actually going to get some of these things done. So some exciting and challenging things ahead.
And I would just say, we have a long way to go in this schedule. But we do have to take our wins where we can get them. And the good news is we've got the design is done on time. So thank you to our wonderful team here. And we're actually ahead of schedule on the construction. So, you know, it's all pointing in the right direction. As I said, there's a long way to go in that process, but you know, we're here today in a good spot.
Just
So-
one thing
And under
about,
budget.
about the chart.
Ahead.
If you look at the chart, see the caret that says today. It's in.
Yeah,
It's because this is this is based off of what we showed in June.
Okay,
It's
So-
it's essentially the same. It
Right,
has
so
not
basically-
changed.
okay,
So-
so that's our point. In case anyone's looking at this,
it's a good point. The only difference between this schedule and the one that was presented in June is the roofing component of the work, right? The roofing is stretching between summer of 2023 and 2024. Where we didn't quite know how much roofing we were gonna do in 23. So it's really like that.
That part he mentions is ahead of schedule.
Right.
We didn't plan on originally on doing the roofs in the summer. That was
so
cool.
on the roofing, I know we had bids that we did not accept because they were not competitive. Is it you folks feeling that because we may go out and bidding on the roofing earlier next year, we'll be in a better shot to get competitive bids?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you remember the timing of the roof bids last year, it was literally accepting
Really?
bids, I think in June for
Really?
work to start 3 weeks later. And quite frankly, most of the roofers had their summers booked already. And, you know, anybody with capacity to take that on it wasn't a competitive situation. We think that this is a great time to bid heading into late fall. And we did see that reflected in some of the interest in the chiller work when we bid it. Now, we did make some technical changes to the chiller work, but we did get much more competitive results in terms of quantity of contractors that were interested and the price relative to where we thought we'd be.
Good.
So, it's not a guarantee, right? But we want to put ourselves in the best position to succeed. And it was a little bit of a long shot in the spring. It worked out in CET, but this is, historically the best time to bid for next summer's work.
And I've been receiving phone calls from contractors asking about where the upcoming work is, that they're very interested in, and Croton is on the radar. So we do anticipate that we're going to see some good bidders take interest in your projects. And have a lot more bidders who've been, so it's all good.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry.
Please, that is important. Okay, so we're gonna jump right in and start with CET. So as I said, we kind of had two areas in each school to talk to you about today. So you've seen these renderings before, and they're pretty much exactly the same as they were last time. But what we've done is we've brought all of the samples that we have for you today to show you that what we actually render is based on actual products. It's not just out of the sky. One thing to know about these materials that we have is because it is a public bid and we do everything as a basis of design. So that being said, we put this in as a basis and then we see what we come up with. But the idea is to try and get as close to that as possible. So these are the images that we had shown before for CET. And really just trying to kind of liven up the space. We did spend a lot of time with Rennie talking and being in the library itself and understanding. I believe she even had conversations with children, you know, what kind of colors they like and materials and textures. And we still get some messages once in a while from them saying, oh, we forgot something. So maybe we'll, do you want to go ahead and we can talk about, so just an example of where we are in the building. So the yellow space is the library space itself, but it also includes the conference room, and then there's a storage room in the back, not a storage room, a used room right now that we're kind of incorporating into the renovation. And then here's the detail of the plan.
Right, so we just also want to show you some of the boards and some of the plans that we do when we're meeting with these user groups. And part of our listening process is to show different types of things like items that aren't necessarily involved in construction, but they'll need to purchase later for the library. So for example, in this board here, we show different types of furniture, just so everybody can talk about what's built in, what's not, how flexible the furniture is. And we also went through a couple iterations of the floor plan just to work with the programming that they had and showing how it works in different locations within the library to come up with that final plan. So. And as Sarah mentioned, so after we have the listening session and we put together these color boards, and some of the things we look for and we work on is we always make sure that we have, you know, energy efficient lighting. We have LED lighting. All the materials are very durable. There's carpet tiles. It's commercial tile that is very easily cleaned. All the areas where you have sinks, for example, so we have Corian tops so that you don't have to worry about delamination with laminate. So we really make a big effort to make sure that all these materials are sustainable materials that are easily maintained. And so these boards, this shows the library pictures, and then we'll get to the next slide, and that shows kind of in some of the bathrooms that we're doing here.
I'm actually going to go ahead and pass these around if you're interested in getting a closer look. So I'll pass the library first.
It's always nice to touch and see what the materials actually are, because they look, in the rendering, they always look beautiful. But so this next slide is just showing what the interior upgrades are that we're doing at the elementary school. We're doing some work in the some bathrooms. We're upgrading a few multi-user bathrooms. We're upgrading the gym. We're putting in new basketball hoops, putting up new wall pads, taking down some of the different materials on the walls and putting up some areas for people to display what messages that they need to display. And you'll see in the green in the back there, we're redoing some carpet in some of the classrooms. There's just like the area where the students sit for reading. And then in the hallway, we're redoing some of the flooring to an updated LVT material. And all of that is, this is just a slide showing an enlargement of each of those areas. We have the bathrooms, we're showing the before pictures so everyone can see that it does need a little bit of updating. We're putting some new tile on the wall, right? And we're going to put new sinks and mirrors in, handicap accessible ones. We'll have the sinks, of course, will be a material that's like a solid surface material. So that's, I mean, partitions are like a solid surface material so that they're easily cleaned. In the classrooms, it's really just, it's a carpet tile that will go in all the classrooms. Right, and then we show the gym pads here and some floor tile there.
So this board is kind of a amalgamation of a number of different spaces. So there's also, so this floor tile here is for art and music in the lobby outside of the cafeteria.
The stair tile?
Oh, yeah, so we're redoing the treads on the stairs in that
Yes.
third or fourth grade wing, yeah.
So since there is between the multi-purpose room and cafeteria, there's, and I can see that, there's kind of a slope around.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking both in terms of, probably mainly in terms of, durability and accessibility for wheelchair and those for mobility wheelchair. Is that tile, and I guess, let's see which one it is.
Yeah, those ones, you're right under your hand there, the colors there, yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. That's going in the entire hallway, right? Is that, yeah.
And that will be kind of tight enough between each tile, so it will be easily navigable.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The next building is,
Yeah, sorry, it's the part of the bathroom.
Mhm.
And you can see in the, I think you can see in the picture, the bathroom stalls always have this gap. Is the new design gonna cover that somehow or do it where it's overlapped like the European system?
I don't know that it'll be the European system, but what we can do is we can specify a hinge that covers that, so you don't see that gap. They're allowed to have, I think it's a 3/8 inch gap, but they sometimes try to give you like a 1/2 inch or they try to make it a little bigger than it should
I
be.
got they're quite from students, I've heard from
Mhm.
students to say it's, yeah, one of the reasons why they're not comfortable using the bathroom. in school,
Really?
because I live here and I get like the boys running to the house to use the bathroom. And I say,
Isn't there an accessory, like, on the door, kind of like a flange overlay?
yeah,
So
Right.
it'll cover,
Yeah.
it'll cover the joint. Yeah.
And,
something for consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
well worth-
In
well worth
elementary,
the investment.
And middle school, yeah.
Yeah.
So now we're moving on to middle school. And just those two of the spaces there, and we'll start with the student support center, which is taking over that large science classroom on the second floor, the main floor of the building.
Right, and that space will have 4 offices in it, a conference room, and it also has a space for the students to feel very comfortable in there. We're showing some carpet in that space. You'll have some acoustic panels on the wall. That's not too loud. We'll again have LED lighting so that you don't have the glare that you might normally see in some of this lighting. And we're even adding a nice acoustic light in there that gives it a little bit of style in the space.
Yeah.
So this shows the layout there of the 4 offices. And then the conference room, there's an admin person when you come in, and then there's a seating area. And right now the furniture is kind of a placeholder. So there's a spot for collaboration, and there might be some individual seats that has been determined.
Question about lighting. Just, I know we have gone through a couple of energy performance contracts, and some of the work that is done with our EPCs, with upgrades in lighting, upgrades in fixtures. I'm just wondering if this is going to replicate or go over something that we've already, in essence, paid for through the EPC, and if that then becomes necessary in order to meet the architectural and design requirements, or there's more effective and efficient things that weren't even around a few years ago.
I believe with the previous project, a lot of it was the actual lamping of the fixtures and not the fixtures.
Retrofit.
Yeah, So there are some spaces such as, science rooms in the high school where the fixtures themselves are quite old and need replacement anyways. But we have had some conversations about, is there ability to reuse any of those and what kind of life they have left in them. But in general, wherever we are renovating space, we are trying to, if those lights, like for example, when you see a ceiling in a space like this that has the ceiling tile with the, fixtures like that, if we can reuse those, we're reusing them. So if the tile is in bad shape, we'll replace the tile. If the lights are good, we'll keep them.
So I know one of the other things that comes up is when we go to classrooms, the faculty members who get the new beautiful classrooms, get some envy from the teachers who don't, so we want to do something to help everybody.
One of the other spaces we're looking at in the middle school is a space that's called the flex space. And what that is it's a space that is kind of a multi-use safe space. It's located here where the purple room is. And I think it used to be
Guidance suite.
right, it used to be a bathroom.
Is there a locker room?
Or a locker room. So, and it's worked out, it's divided kind of into 3 little units, which actually works out well for the program that they have. And what this does is it has, one side has kind of comfortable seating for the students. In the center, they have kind of a classroom area, and on the other side, they have more of a supervised study space. And we have a board on this, and on this board, you'll see there's also the high school space that has a similar program. And it just happens that we try to be careful with how much boards we use so that they're both.
A question about that, guys. Some people know I'm also a member of the Putnam Northern Westchester Voices. I took a tour last week, or the week before, and one of the things that they have is they have a sensory room where students who need that common either equipment or lighting or mood or whatever and utilize that. And it just popped into my head that this is a population where something like that, perhaps in what is now shown as either the private or the program room, might be good to have for students who might need that. And I don't know if that's something that can be thought about by, you folks in architecture and design and perhaps administration. I think if that's can be somehow incorporated.
Yeah, we did have some conversations about that with those who will be using the space. This space that you see in the image is actually designed to be somewhat like that, does not necessarily could be for one person at a time. It's an open space to the central area so that it is always observed and that there is no one left alone there. And then that, like you said, that private space that's on the other side was meant for a series of different options for that space. I think they believe there may be even some testing going on in there, private conversations, but yet again, there's still some glass, you can see through it, everything's pretty open. So I think they'll be able to use the spaces interchangeably as needed. I think it also depends on how many students are using the space at a time as well. So.
But there may be things such as the nature of the lighting, be able to dim the lighting. I know they had a fish tank in there for.
Right.
And
we talked about, just the comfort level of the furnishing, right? Or the, I think at one point, the first image we had was one of those little tented, almost tented kind of spaces where you could kind of be in a bit of a cocoon. I think we kind of passed on that because it was a little too young for the age level, but kind of keeping that idea where you can feel comforted by, the furnishings or the space itself.
Right, and the furniture that is placed in here right now are really just placeholders. We haven't really gotten quite into the weeds onto exactly what those furniture pieces would be. So that's something we can definitely bring up.
okay, good.
I have a question about it's carpet tile, is that correct? Does our budget include extras?
You
Yes.
always get added.
You'll get an attic stock. It's usually around 10% of whatever the square footage of the floor is.
Right.
You'll get that as part of the contract and it'll be delivered to the school and stored for whatever you need it for. Plus you'll have all those submittals too. So that if you ever had to go and find any of that stuff in the future, you have the information to do that.
Always good. That's the advantage of the carpet tile.
Replace.
Yeah.
We did the auditorium and like a month later, they dumped a gallon of paint. And it's so quick, you know, you pull 4 tiles up and it's good as new.
Perfect example.
These are some renderings of the high school, which you hopefully have seen. In the high school, we were talking about refreshing the entire space, making it more welcome, and essentially adding a kitchen in there. So this is the space with the high ceiling. We have, you can see we have a coffee bar in there. We have different types of seating for different students. In this left-hand corner, you can see a picture of the existing cafeteria right now. And so we're trying to make this much more up-to-date and warm and much more welcoming. And this plan, you can see in red where the existing cafeteria is and how the back space, more in the center of the core of the building, will be opened up to expand the cafeteria. There'll be 2 entrances. There'll be one from the back hallway there, and then there's the existing entrance. So it's there now.
Yeah, I think this may have changed since we did this, we've been working on this quite a bit over the summer. And so some of the things that you may not have seen the rendering at the top is the new portion, which you will see on the right side of the screen there. So you're seeing there's a proposal currently for a full cooking kitchen in there, as well as additional seating. And the beauty of this pan that we spent a bit of time reworking it, going back and forth, having meetings, and we've gotten to a point where you can see there's a seat count there, well over 200 seats. And so what we've tried to do is combine that with the seating that it's actual seats in the atrium or in the rotunda. But collectively, we had said that we'd like to get, at least 250 seats. And so now we're kind of in the, 260 or so range. And that's not even packing it completely tightly. So there's space to move. There's areas for, refuse and condiments and things like that. So, and you can see also that what we've done in order to make that happen is to put the refrigeration for that kitchen out in the courtyard now, and it will be protected by a screen, so a beautiful screen. So, at first we hesitated to do that, but the idea was that it makes it a lot better on the inside, giving more space for the students, for the kitchen itself, and allowing for the possibility of the high school to be autonomous in terms of cooking in the future.
Sarah, what number option?
I was gonna 11B. I lost track. No, we did. While I think we proposed a few at the beginning, we're like, okay, great, let's do it. And then we went, wait a second, let's think about this a little bit. So, and we did go back and forth quite a bit. So as you can see in the image on the top, we're creating kind of like a space that you would think is kind of dark and enclosed on the inside of the building, which would be the portion on the right, kind of becomes a little bit more bright. It's connected to the older space, which we're renovating as well, and you get some daylight coming in there. And then the nice part about it is if you're coming from this location here down into the cafeteria, you'd be coming straight down and you have the view that you see on the top. So kind of coming into a welcoming space, and then all you have to do is kind of turn and you're in the line to get here.
Is everyone aware of the orientation? So we would go right through
Right
here,
over here, yeah.
where the conference.
Right,
room
so
is.
it's basically where the video production suite is right now. So coming down this hall right here, you would be getting to the end of the hall and opening up into the new half of the cafeteria and the kitchen. And then it connects into the existing piece through the other side of the room.
I have some questions about the refrigeration penthouse. Penthouse in the old fashioned sense, meaning a building that's built up against another building, which is the original source of the term. Is that it's a single story structure? Does that have any implications for emergency access to the floors above, fire department access? I presume that's been taken into consideration already.
Yeah, so when we first put that in the plan, we looked at it in terms of the elevation, making sure that it wasn't, first of all, blocking any of the windows for the upper story, which is the new Innovative Learning Center. There will be a bit of equipment that will likely be on top of the roof, but it's not very high, and that would be protected. We also have rescue windows from those spaces that are necessary for code from the second floor, but those don't necessarily have to come out over that refrigeration unit.
Okay.
So we tried to fit in the biggest unit we could in the smallest space possible. To try to kind of condense that and make sure that we still have access, you know, if they need ladders or, you know, because that courtyard, actually we need to access quite a bit of rooms from there.
And final question related to that is noise impact, refrigeration unit. What are we going to do to make sure that it isn't noisy enough to, because that is a enclosed courtyard, which means there's going to be reverberation. Sound's gonna bounce around and
it's right underneath.
and it's underneath the classroom.
Classroom is across the way and.
Just remind, we need to think about the acoustic situation.
Yeah, so that is proposed as a piece of equipment. It's not a building in a traditional sense. We're not going out and putting studs on the ground, putting a foundation in. It's going to be a concrete pad. The refrigeration unit comes as a panelized system or a prefabricated box that just gets kind of put there adjacent to the building. And there are options on the type of compressor that can be used, and there are options on where it can be located. So it's a great question. We'll put it to our food service consultant, and there may be an option to remotely locate the compressor. So it could be on a roof somewhere else or in a better location. So and we'll look at that to make sure we minimize the noise.
Also, on that same subject, a matter of delivery. I know when we talked about the kitchen at PVC, and even before that, one of the concerns is if this is going to be a freestanding kitchen, there's going to be a delivery to the kitchen.
Yeah.
And there's going to be storage, obviously, the food that is delivered both in refrigeration, otherwise the delivery to that refrigerated unit would appear to go through the courtyard.
Yes, which is, I believe, how deliveries are delivered currently.
Right, because
Yeah.
obviously a lot more when you're, and so what you would be talking there is, since you're not, probably trucks aren't gonna back up into the courtyard, they're gonna basically park and then deliver along the pathway, so to speak, up and over. Is that going to create an issue regarding time of delivery and impediments to what's going on in the building? And I was thinking about, you know, if they show up at 11 o'clock and kids are, you know, in class and going out of class, and you get this truck there, a refrigerated truck, and, you know, it can be an issue. So.
Yeah, it's operational concern. I think one of the drivers on the location of that kitchen was actually accessibility to an outside door, just that purpose. Because there were a number of iterations where the kitchen was located in the lower right-hand corner of that plan, where we see those square 4-person tables. And that drove some concerns about getting goods in and out of that kitchen.
Right.
Because really, it would probably force it through the building. Would be the easy, you know, kind of path of least resistance there, which I think as a group we thought was not the best approach. I think operationally and from a design perspective. So that's definitely the plan, is to provide a direct door to the kitchen from the outside where food service does not have to go through the building. And operationally, I think it will have to be worked out in terms of time of delivery. My experience, and I don't run a kitchen, but typically those deliveries are pretty early. We're talking about, you know, baker's trucks and that sort of thing. And I would imagine with this kitchen being full service, it would limit the midday or early, you know, morning deliveries from, let's say, the PVC kitchen. So the hope is with some organization that can happen earlier in the day. And then the kitchen can prep, you know, make the meals, and then, you know, trash kind of goes out at the end of the day. So there's definitely an operational procedure to work out there, but the group thinking, working through these designs was that exterior door was advantageous.
So in looking at this, particularly once again about the refrigeration unit, I believe there is a door from that refrigeration unit to the kitchen, right? That's okay. So you're not going through the rest of the cafeteria.
Yeah, there's also a double door just adjacent to
Right.
the refrigeration unit. So, you know, if there were a larger delivery that made sense to kind of sneak in that way, you know, that probably makes sense. Obviously, it's not during lunch period.
Now, we have not talked about the PVC
Mhm.
refrigeration unit,
Yeah.
which I know is, so is that
It's a similar,
similar in that it's gonna be on the outside?
yes,
I'll go there and there'll be some entrance.
yes. And again, that's really a piece of equipment. That either comes as a panelized product or a fully fabricated unit that is, you know, delivered on the back of a truck. That one, the PVC may be easier to do as a panelized direction because it's a difficult place to get to. But this one, I would suspect will come as a complete unit.
Okay, thank you.
This one's a bit heavy.
Right, so the colorful board, you'll see, we put some pieces of tile on that, which would go on the half wall, so it's easy to clean. And that allows students to eat at a kind of the counter height. And then you'll also see in there, we have some homogeneous VCT, which means the color goes all the way through, so for cleaning, that would be really good. It's not really VCT, it's really vinyl. And then it just shows some of the other materials we're looking at, you know, some countertops that would be chlorine countertops, again, at the serving line, everything that would be very durable. And that would be easy to maintain. There's you see a few tiles on that wall too, and that actually is in, yeah, on some of the open walls between the, you can see there's kind of a wall between the back area where the cooler is and the large area that has the high ceiling. There's a wall there. And so any walls that are like open like that, we'd cover those with tiles so that those would be easily maintained. And then we have our Innovative Learning Center. At the high school, right now there's a space now that is a number of classrooms that is being reprogrammed so that still is a number of classrooms, but they're flexible classrooms. And it also includes an area for teachers to get together and some smaller breakout spaces. And you can see the plan on the left. It has the doors remain where the doors are right now to that big, large space. But this image is an image of one of the classrooms. What we're using is a nano wall panel system so that they can open up the classrooms and have the flexibility to put a large group in there. And all the along both of the sides of that walkway are nano walls. And then we have the color board that shows the big circular feature when you walk in off the corridor is kind of your entrance to this new space. And we took the opportunity to have a couple of nice little features in here so that you, before you get to the real classroom space, you really feel like you've landed somewhere new and special. And although at this end, we don't have any windows, we've provided some breakout space, and then we put in a moss wall in this room when you come in. And this moss wall it's a non-toxic, biodegradable, sustainable material that, the only way you have to maintain it is to keep the humidity levels at a certain temperature. And then, but it will give you a sense of kind of zen when you walk into that space, and it's a little different. And we'll pass around the board, and you can actually open up the box and touch the moss and see what that's about. We have a carpet here, hopefully throughout the whole space, where it transitions from a nice kind of warm taupey gray color to a color that's more of a red orange, and then back again to the taupey gray. And the intent on that was to express the corridor in the dark color so that SED won't make us change the material in that corridor. So we're hoping by having certain elements like ceiling elements and wall elements in there that we'll be able to continue with the carpet, or keep it nice and quiet and leave the doors open, or make the space feel like one large space. And just for example, that carpet is a carbon neutral carpet. So we're trying hard to look at sustainability when we go through this.
Question on sound back, particularly when you're opening a classroom, but even if not, because of the nature of the walls that you're.
And the walls. So there's a couple of things. Actually, when you walk in, the moss wall actually is an acoustic material. So that does help. The carpet, of course, will help. Your ceiling tiles, and like you would in this room, that would help. And the walls that have been specified actually have one of the highest STC ratings that are available for nano walls that are made. So they're about the same, almost the same as having a drywall wall put up. So they're pretty good.
Does the humidity level in the space require other considerations?
No, I think the temperature, the range is like between 30 and 80%. It's not anything
It's a
crazy.
wide range.
Ambient.
Yeah.
But it's not like a living wall that needs maintenance and watering, and I think it lasts
Right.
quite a long time. I think it's a long.
That's my view. Actually, Kevin's cute as well. So as I mentioned earlier, the current work that's happening now that the design is complete is a process of cost control. And that sounds a lot scarier than it is. What we're doing is we're doing internal estimates. So we work with a third-party consultant that does very detailed takeoffs on the KG&D side. And Kevin has a team as part of Triton that does a very detailed takeoff. So we have prepared collectively estimates that are hundreds of pages long. And the process now is reconciliation. So what does that mean? That means that we are taking the estimates and comparing them. So we have two sets of eyes, and we're taking the estimates to say, hey, we estimated X at $1 million. Why do you estimate it at $2 million? And the estimators literally compare notes. They compare quantity takeoffs. They compare scope review, which means they make sure they capture the entire scope in their estimates. And then, of course, unit costs. So when we talk about cost control, we need that baseline data before we can do anything. And it's really important that we do this reconciliation to compare. Once we have that, we have a series of tools at our disposal if we need to make adjustments. That could be what you've heard as value engineering, which in our view is looking at something to achieve the same goal in a more cost-effective manner, right? That's not talking about scope reduction. We could talk about project scope adjustments or development of alternate bid proposals. We would recommend alternates no matter what, because it will help maximize value on bid day. But we're not at that place yet. But what we can tell you is we have not done the reconciliation. That's to be scheduled. We're hoping to get that on the calendar for the next week or two. But based on the early feedback, we do see discrepancies and pressure at Spencer Field and at the transportation facility. And the most concerning component or thing at the moment is that the estimates are not very close to each other. So one team for instance, may see Spencer over budget, and another team doesn't. So before we can come report that, we want to get a firm understanding of where we are. The good news is the work at the buildings seems to align very closely. The estimates align very closely with each other. Again, that's preliminary, and they're very close to the budget. So that's, a great indicator out of the gate. So again, the next step is for our teams to get together, get in the same room, go through the estimates in their entirety, so we can come back to you with information about where we believe we stand on the project costs. Kevin, do you want to add anything to that process, or they cover it all?
No, you nailed it. This is a very important part of the process. We take it very seriously, both teams. We have done this many times in the past on other projects. If things tend to trend a little higher, we'll figure out, as you mentioned, some alternatives, ways of thinking about those spaces a little bit differently, so you can still maintain the overall program but perhaps do it a little bit less expensive. We'll talk about how that works logistically, how, maybe we could save money in other ways, in how we approach the project from a construction point of view. So it may not necessarily be a way of design, it may be a way of construction.
And again, that's a big if, if we get to that point.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we have to do anything of that nature, but this process is really about eliminating surprises on bid day, so that we have a good sense of where we'll be, and then maximizing value to the district, so that, let's say we're under budget, we can look at ways to add value, and so at the end of the day, we all think we got the best product.
Yeah, and we like the idea of the alternates also, because what that allows us to do is it allows us to, if we are able to see a savings in the base bids, it gives the board options to perhaps look at other parts of the project to do more, maximize the entire bond.
So you were saying you're going to be doing reconciliation over the next week or two. If after you go through that process, there is, I guess, some of these considerations to take into account. What do you think what is the, I guess, expected timeline on that?
Right, that's a really good question.
Sitting back
So,
with us having a conversation.
That's the benefit of this SED review period, right? We do a little bit of time to manage this process, and I want to say, if for whatever reason the estimates are higher than the budget, that's a collaborative discussion. We're not going to go disappear, make a bunch of decisions, and come back and say magically we're on budget. We would come back and talk about where we see issues and how to resolve them, and explore different options as a group. And that's the process. So we have a little bit of time. The idea is get that done, so that by the time SED review comes through, we're ready to bid.
Ready to go.
We're not then addressing any issues or making sure we're in a good place. So that's what's happening now. Those are the immediate next steps for us, and then we'll start to talk about a bid schedule, so that we can bid the work at Spencer, or the athletics and safety project, as well as the district-wide capital project at the beginning of 2024, and ramp up for construction this summer coming up. Seems like we just finished construction.
There we go again.
And then I think at the same time, there'll be discussion about phasing and logistics at all the buildings. I know Kevin,
Stealing my thunder.
Go for it.
So, yeah, I mean, that's the next logical stage, right? Is to sit down with Brad and the other administrators, athletic department, and work out a plan, how we're going to access the site, how do we safely move things around, how we work around, you still have to educate your students while we're doing all this. So how do we do all that? We'll put that together on paper, have it reviewed by a number of people to make sure that the concept works for what we're trying to complete from the construction side, but also the continuation of the educational process on your side. And then we'll put all of that into the documents and make all of the details very clear, so we make sure that the contractor buys that, right? As part of their contract, and we'll implement it. And so there's going to be there's a lot of complex challenges when we're talking about some of the work that's coming up at the high school. I think we all understand that. And so, but we're going to make every effort to make it as smooth and as seamless and as accessible and easy as possible. All right. There'll be some the old expression, you gotta break a couple eggs to make an omelet, so true is construction sometimes.
Okay,
Yeah,
so next time we see you, we'll have, information about the numbers and talk about next steps for, hopefully getting out the bid.
Anyone else have any other questions for?
Yeah, before you guys go, could you talk a little bit about the change order on the asphalt, the binder at the top
For the stormwater project,
for,
that's for Bradford.
yes, order, yeah.
Okay, I'm not, did you see what change order that was to modify the.
To modify it from super pave mix to the type 3 binder.
Okay, so that was limiting the top coat in the
Yeah.
parking lot?
Yes.
yeah, it was,
Sorry, should have.
if
It was a change in
in the type.
the type of pavement we used. I believe LA Group had spec'd
A super highway?
a highway blend,
Super heavy
and we
highway.
switched to a light duty, because it's it's not a road, it's not a parking lot, so we switched to it's like it's a smaller aggregate, so it's smoother and
It's not gonna get that much of a.
Yeah.
it's not a heavy traffic
You
load on
won't
it.
get
So.
the bang for your buck with that,
Yeah.
and we recognize that both are gonna do the exact same thing. The wear life will be the same because you're not driving heavy trucks on it.
That makes sense.
So we recognize that, I believe it's a credit.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
we took it back,
Yeah.
we found a way to save some money because we just didn't think it was necessary.
And correct me if I'm wrong, this is seemed like a little while ago, we talked about this, there was some modification of the scope as well to address future construction traffic, which I think you identified as part of that work, so that it's also meant to protect against any potential traffic that may happen during the construction work at the building. So there was a couple aspects to that, which ended up being a net crowd, right?
Yeah.
Brad identified some access considerations for the back of the high school, which to get down to PVC when we do the playground work there, that by changing some of the mixes would actually give us a more durable mix in some spaces where we can take away, we don't need to put the heavy duties mix like in the walking path. So
Okay.
that was
That's
the
helpful.
strategy
Thank
there.
you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
All right. Well, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
It's good to see you all again.
Yeah.
We'll
It was wonderful. Thank you for joining
do
us.
this again soon, right?
Yeah. We look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Steal a little bit more life.
Oh, good.
I will give these guys a moment to pack up and unless you want to stay for the rest of our meeting.
More than welcome.
More than welcome to stay, but
Thank you for your offer.
we'll let you guys get up.
Pushing my way to the door. You need any help? Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you, guys. All right, so with that, I'll turn it over to our second portion of the evening and turn it over to Superintendent Walker.
Sure. Thank you, Sarah. And before I take the opportunity to spend a couple minutes talking about the goals for 23-24, I did want to take a moment to recognize and thank our outstanding leadership team, our Board of Education, on the occasion of school board recognition week. And yes. And individually and collectively, the board sets the tone for the organization and the way that you function, the way that you work together as a team, the things that you talk about, the direction that you set. That has a profound impact on the work that happens every day, not only administratively, but throughout the entire system. And I think probably the individually and collectively, the team, the board may not have an understanding of just how significant your impact is and has been in what a tremendously successful system this continues to be. And it's difficult to figure out how to say thank you to 7 people who leave their own homes, their own families, their own loved ones, and volunteer their time to come to rooms like this one and engage in discussions that are about other people's family and other people's children and the future of folks you don't even know. And in doing so, change the trajectory of the entire community. And so one of the things that we thought about as a team was that we think knowing this group, the 7 of you, is that you do that because of the connection that you feel and want to feel to the young people in this community. Right, and obviously you have your own families and those children in your lives have friends and others that you connect with, but we wanted to give you an opportunity for us to say thank you to you by helping to connect you with another young person in the community in our school district who perhaps you don't know, and allow you to hopefully begin and have an ongoing dialogue and discussion with another Tiger, right? A student in our system that they can learn from you, you can learn from them. And so over the past few days, we've been working with our building administrators who have handpicked 7 members of our Tiger student body, 1 for each of you, who have written to you, starting to express some of the things that they enjoy about being a Tiger student, in hopes that this will be an opportunity for you to have an ongoing dialogue with them, one-on-one, and when you get a chance to visit the buildings, hopefully it'll be someone new for you to connect with. These are folks whose families we've all spoken to, who are, and actually one of them called today to say that this happened to be a young lady at the high school, came home earlier this week and said how, talked about the opportunity, and her mother called and said, I just want to tell you how excited our daughter is about this chance to engage with a member of the board. So this is, we think and we hope, our way of saying thank you to you. Someone new for you to connect with, an opportunity to deepen a discussion about what an incredibly special place this is, hopefully offer new perspectives, both for you and the student. So each of you received from Dr. B a postcard of sorts with a welcome picture, identifying information, and at the bottom, their email address. And all of them are looking forward to hearing from you, beginning what will be hopefully a long-term relationship and a new connection for you in our way of saying thank you. I also want to mention thanks, Lauren, from our communications team for putting together the design on this, but truly and profoundly, we are incredibly appreciative. We know how fortunate we are to get a chance to work with the 7 of you. Thank you this week and every week for what you do, as well as the CET Kindness Club, who was nice enough to share some pumpkins and other goodies for you. Again, it's small ways to say what is truly the biggest possible thanks. So with our appreciation. Thank you. So we'd love to hear some updates as you get a chance to communicate with your new Tiger friend, and hopefully this will be someone you'll get a chance to see often and build a long-term connection with. Thank you again.
I know my kid.
You do? Oh, fantastic. All right. Very good. Very good. We did try to avoid that, actually. Also, of course, my pleasure to spend a couple of minutes sharing with the community and the board my goal for the year. I think it's a fair statement to say there's probably never been a better time to do my job in this system because of just the sheer amount of opportunity that we have and the trajectory that we have as a system in front of us. And so one of the things I always try to think about in my work is the concept of essentialism, and to prioritize everything is to prioritize nothing. And so how do we as a system go about making sure that we're spending time toward the most potentially impactful and important things that can help to move our system forward. And so I'm happy to spend a couple of minutes sharing my thoughts on those with you this evening. Okay, and I think it's important for us just to take a moment to consider that we want to continue to use the guiding questions to focus our work. And I think we do that for a couple of reasons. First, because faculty members in almost every system are used to every year coming back from summer vacation and being asked to experience this kind of whiplash of what are the new things we're going to be asked to care about? What's the new direction of the system from the last time that we saw each other in June? And so as we design these guiding questions, one of the priorities was to make sure that they were multi-year efforts, that this isn't about a direction that changes every 10 months, but about a direction that hopefully is a generational one and a transformational one for the system. So I tried to design my goal is using most of those guiding questions in the direction of them most broadly. And so the first, of course, is we have this, again, and I've talked about this before, I think the vision map is the most potentially important journey that certainly I've been on as a leader or as a part of any school system. And so certainly providing leadership for the implementation of the vision map itself is an incredibly important priority for me as the leader of the system administratively. And so this is a year, and we've talked about this before, to be both dreamers and doers and storytellers, right? And so that an incredibly wide swath of priorities. And so I tried to include their action steps that, of course, involves the doers. In addition to being dreamers, the doers right now are our building leaders and our faculty. And so how do we go from this incredibly aspirational vision map to what you started to see evidence of, which is work in the buildings? And so when we start shifting a system like this, we talk about it's not turning a speedboat, it's turning an ocean liner. And those things take time and precision, and there's a lot of really thoughtful work that needs to go into that. And so that is, we spend time together as a leadership team, and we did yesterday, beautifully facilitated by John. So much of the work of the thrust is about how do we go about making these dreams into reality. So from my seat, sir, that's an incredible priority. Part of that also is to identify high quality coaching and support for our leaders who are doing that work. And then the process of sharing the story, telling the story of when we say what school can be, what does that mean for folks? How do we get that to resonate with folks both inside and outside of the system? And then longer term, as we start to think about how we fund the work, what does the vision map do to the way that we think about our budgeting processes? And I think, again, that's where the guiding questions come in, because we saw the impact that those had on the budget for this year. And we would anticipate that that would continue to be that way going forward in the future. So as we think about kind of what might success or progress look like, what are some deliverables, certainly because part of CHHS's work is the development of the interdisciplinary core courses, that we would want to see those included in the 24-25 master schedule. And that work is happening now, and the teams will be getting together again next week to do some work on this, because I know this partially because in order to get substitute coverage for them to do it, John and Jared and Rachel and I are going to be covering some classes at CHHS next week. So if you hear about some issues with behavior or learning, that's probably associated with us in teaching roles, as well as we think about PVC's work in the passion pursuit period. What's the feedback, right? What is the impact? How are students and faculty responding to that opportunity? The continued refinement of the house system, and John and I had a chance to visit a kindergarten classroom today at CET, where a member of the special area staff was collaborating on an assignment on the project with a kindergarten class teacher and students to create something that wouldn't otherwise have existed if the two of them were working together. So that spirit and context of collaboration is something I'm going to talk about in a moment as well as how we think through engagement of staff, family, and community in that envisioning of what school can be, and how the budget reflects the steps aligned with the 24-25 vision map. I really, how we do.
Everyone.
Happy senior night.
Thank you.
Great. Outstanding. What was the score?
3 hours.
Wow. Never had a chance. I love it. Obviously, as well as we just saw the future facilities project, also an incredible. If we weren't doing any other work in the system, that project alone would be enough to occupy the time and the thinking of really the entire administrative team in the system. And so we're fortunate enough to be able to do this vision map implementation while also implementing facilities that we know are designed to be aligned with that kind of vision for what school can be. So a lot of these are logistics and frankly involves support for Denise, who's doing the hard work here, and Brad, who's doing the hard work here. But making sure that the entire system is in a place to be responsive to those things from a budgetary perspective, from a communications perspective. There are a ton of questions within the system, within the faculty and the staff and students about what this is going to look like, what are the steps involved here. And so communication, regularly reporting information, to our folks internally, and then certainly in the community is going to be an incredibly important part of my work over the next months and years, frankly. Additionally, this to me is probably the most interesting and important guiding question that came out of last year's work. And so I want to make sure that some of my goals this year continue to reflect that. And I smile every time I hear a faculty member say the term thoughtful risk-taking. And that's become, that term and passion have become part of the vernacular of the system. And so, you know, our work to continue to promote that and to make sure that folks know that that's part of what our priorities are for everyone who's a part of our system are certainly endemic to my goals for the upcoming year. And we've done a lot of thinking, and I know we've shared this in some ways with the board already, and are looking forward to having other conversations at work sessions and otherwise about what it means to be a collaborator in our system, and really should be in any modern education system. That the work so often of being a faculty member has been incredibly isolating, and really since, you know, the 1600s when John Smith and others first envisioned schools. These have been isolating one person roles. And so that institutionalizes people over the course of years and decades. And so what we're doing, I think, is genuinely potentially transformative in that we're looking not only to recruit, but to develop over time a collaborative orientation for everybody who works in the system. And there are a lot of parts of the system that aren't at all built for this work. So this is really trying to rethink a lot of the ways that our system is designed, from the structures of scheduling to APPR and the requirements around that, to what we initially provide in terms of messaging to new faculty, as well as the collective bargaining agreements and what impact those have on whether or not genuine elbow to elbow creative collaboration can occur in the system or not. So I think if you look at those 4 bullets, I think you'll see that we have a special opportunity with a few things coming together at the same time. One, a vision and a culture that we think is ready for this, right? There's a trust in the system that I think will allow for momentum to build here. 2, the APPR waiver, which I look forward next week to asking at NISBA how many other districts have this kind of waiver. I guarantee you will come back with the answer of none. There just aren't any other districts that are doing this, as well as an entire paradigm shift in the new teacher academy, which comes from Vision, and then 2 outstanding faculty members, and Jenny Rissigno and Erica Camillo, who are prepared to implement that. We met with them earlier today. And the moment in time, of course, of the collective bargaining agreement with the CTA coming due for new discussion, and a tremendous and collaborative relationship there, right? So any one of those 4 things would be great. The fact that we have all 4 of them at the same time means that it would be a miss if we didn't have this as a high level goal for the system. Because I think this is about the future of what it feels like to work here. This is about the kind of people who want to come here and the experience that they have and how they grow over the course of time. And I think it comes from a core value of the best learning comes from watching and being elbow to elbow with the people who are doing the same hard, challenging, and nuanced work that you're doing. And that's a shift too, really, for any system. So of all the goals, and I think of all the work that we're doing, this, in my opinion, others may disagree, I think this has the greatest potential for long-term change in the entire system. And then, of course, it's about how do we continue to connect with the community, think about what an equity lens looks like and feels like in this context. And to me, this is one of the other guiding questions that has been really important and has launched 1,000 tremendous conversations with some great leadership from our building leaders, our faculty, from Rachel, from John, and from others who have been and will continue to do some great work here. And so a lot of my thinking comes about how I can support that, continue to nurture that, and make sure that continues to be a very frequent discussion in the system. And that's about this, again, this idea of the connection between the district and community where we think about what school can be, not as a message that comes from us outward, but as a dialogue. That everyone has been through school, everyone's experienced school, and so we all have, in that way, the same foundational experiences of knowing that whether we loved school or didn't, everybody can agree that school can be better. Right, and that there are systemic things about schools in this country that I think we would all like to see changed. And there are a lot of reasons why folks haven't had the opportunity to do it before. We think we do. We think we also have the courageousness of the leadership of many people across the system who are in a position to say, this is a moment in time, and this is our lightning in a bottle opportunity. Let's make sure that we utilize this. And so this is about, in my mind, communication, connection across the system, including, I want to give Greg again some great credit for the creation and implementation of the district's new website. That's a huge part of how we are forward-facing, community-facing. And we talked about what a legacy opportunity that is for you, sir. Thank you for that. As well as the broader communications plan about the vision map itself, right? That by the end of this year, the concept of the vision map and what school can be, in my mind, it's a miss if broad swaths of our community don't know about that, aren't in a position to have talked about it, to have been in person with us in groups, engaging with each other. And I think that's part of what can be long lasting about this. And is that everybody's vision for what school can be may be different. But I think the opportunity to engage in and collaboratively create that kind of school system is one that is incredibly rare. As well as utilizing the Tri-State Consortium visit, that's another one of those things where if that had occurred a year ago or 2 years from now, the moment might not have been right. But thanks to some really great leadership that preceded me and certainly John's leadership, the moment is right for them to come back to see the work that's happened here and to be able to, those are really great thinkers, to be able to help us get some feedback about how well the vision map in this early stage has started to take root in the system, how well the faculty, the staff, the community know about the vision map. That was a nice little musical interlude. No, you're good, you're good, you're fine.
We both on that.
And so as we think about some potential evidence of progress there and what steps forward look like, I would think that by the end of the year, we'd be able to produce qualitative and quantitative sources, which suggest that there is an understanding of the vision map and its concepts and what it means for us. Certainly the change to Parent Square and the website, that will yield a ton of quantitative data and qualitative about how those are working from a messaging standpoint, as well as probably as much as any other conversation that's happening in the district. We're continuing conversations about our families and students for whom English is not their first or primary language, and about how we are needing to better engage there, help those families to understand and take advantage of the programs in our system. And so you'll certainly hear continued evidence of positive direction in that area through the next few months, and most certainly through the budget process as well, led by Rachel and others. So that, again, I would just say it's a profound honor to get a chance to do this work. Just the idea of being able to create goals like these, that I guarantee if I shared those with my colleagues across the region, this is a phenomenal region to be a school leader in. I think there'd be a great deal of envy, not because of anything that I do, but because of the system in which I get a chance to do it. So I want to say thank you for that opportunity, and I'm happy to take any questions that the team has.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
This is kind of in the weeds question, but I'm curious, how do you, or what's the process of taking interdisciplinary courses and making them part of the core curriculum?
I'm sorry, I just asked me again.
So one of the first potential evidences for the first goal is include interdisciplinary courses for core credit.
Yeah.
What's the process of doing that?
Oh, creating them?
Yeah.
So
I think creating and having it approved
all getting them
to be
approved.
covered, you know.
Right, so that, a lot of the work, the upfront work there in terms of the research was something we had done last year, which was to work with SED and BOCES about how their course approval processes work for things like these. And John will correct me if I'm misremembering, but one of the things we learned was that, there isn't a lot of established process at SCD for this because not a lot of districts are doing it. So what we learned is that this is one area in which there seems to be a fair amount of ability for the district to establish some of its own parameters. That we did work with BOCES to get some advice and some counsel on this, but that this has really been driven by the faculty and by students saying, these are the things that we're passionate about. These are the things we want to collaborate on. And Laura's leadership on this has been exemplary. But to short answer is we actually have a fair amount of autonomy on this. That's it.
Okay, good, thanks for that. Yes. And then my second question is on your third goal, and I think the collaboration, that I agree with you. I think that has the most long-term impact.
Yeah, that could be special.
On the district. At what point would you want to include, and then we've had this conversation before, the students' perspective in the feedback loop, right? Whether it's, not test scores, right? Or potentially could be one of them, but what measures would you consider, or when would you want to consider that student feedback in this process?
Yeah, some of those conversations are already happening, and a lot of that again speaks to cultural readiness around these things. That student surveys to me are a fascinating measure that I think are underutilized in our system and probably most. And there's, you have to have a pretty high degree of comfort to as a professional to say, okay, give me and my teaching partner here unvarnished, honest, anonymous feedback about what it's like to be in our classroom. But I think as we design some of these opportunities, I think the moment is right for those. And I think we have the faculty who are already saying through their involvement in this work that they want to be a part of something different, right? That this is a thoughtful risk to design something that doesn't have a comparable in most other places and puts them in a situation where they are now in a professional dynamic that's different than what they've been used to for years. So to me, that mechanism feels like it can be really interesting and informative for us. Yeah.
No questions?
Piggyback on that, would you include it in this round of goals and potential evidence of progress? Or is this something that you want to build the foundation for this year?
Yeah.
And think about it for next year?
Yeah, I think it would be for next year because the courses, these courses specifically will run in 24-25. This year is a planning year, but that as we launch the master schedule, the community will see bioethics and STEM and humanities are going to be core course offerings for 9th and 10th graders, et cetera, at the high school. So I think it's really for 24-25. I think the other part of that is, I think there's an opportunity within some of the APPR work that we're doing to inject some of this conversation. It really doesn't exist now in any real way in the system, but I think not through negotiations, but I think negotiations may give us an opportunity to say, let's use these conversations to then decide what we want kind of our next work to be. And I think that's an opportunity to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Question, thanks for this, by the way. This is great info. The point under the provide leadership for the implementation of the future facility project. So, you have here ensuring that stakeholders are informed of the progress and implementation of it all. And I was just wondering if you had some ideas of examples to how to do that, because I've been hearing a lot of questions about, I think there's a general awareness that there's stuff going on. You can see the machinery out there, they see action now. So I think people have a general awareness, but don't have a sense of kind of the broader picture, the timeline. And you have here how regular operations will be impacted, right? And I think there'll be more and more questions as time goes on. So I'm wondering what ideas you have to get the word out to the community about this.
Yeah, I think with something this large, we want to start with our internal folks and make sure that, one, they're aware, and then two, that once they are, they can become ambassadors for and communicators of what's about to happen, right? So my first concern is to make sure that our faculty and staff know the timeline, have an understanding of what the vision is, feel like they've been a part of creating that, and then most importantly for them, understand how it's going to impact their lives. And what does this mean for my classroom, for noise level, for whether or not fields are going to be available, for whether or not my auditorium, my classroom is going to be available. So those meetings with faculty leaders, with other unit leaders, faculty meetings, anytime there are groups of our team together, those are moments of opportunity for us to share that and to hear from folks what the questions are. And I think 3 of those meetings already this week, right? And those kind of logistical, when will we know, when can we share things? And then beyond that, that's work with the communications team about, the various ways that we get information out there. I think one of the key things is we have opportunities now with folks perhaps in the community who are listening, who are paying attention, who may not have been previously. And so community presence and opportunities to invite people to come together in ways that I haven't done since I've been here, I think are things that the board should look for me to be doing over the next few months.
I have a question as well, sort of related on the fourth guiding question about community connection and engagement, which references the vision now and the language there about prioritizing connection and belonging. So it's really exciting to see, and we've definitely seen evidence of significant inroads made to reach district families whose first language is other than English. I'm curious as to what else you might be thinking about in terms of prioritizing connection and belonging for students and other individuals in the community who, for example, might not be feeling connection due to gender identity, sexual identity, ethnic identity.
So that's an area that I know that Rachel has been providing some really good thinking and some leadership around. And so, I think one of our roles is going to be to make sure that we continue to ensure that we're well positioned to provide leadership here. So there are conferences and professional learning opportunities that both John and I have signed up for individually and separately, regionally and at a statewide level, so that we're represented in those conversations. We have access to the newest and hopefully best thought through resources, and also that Rachel's positioned to lead that. Right? That she's, I think, established herself well as a great thinker on this. And so part of our role then is to make sure that she has resources, that her role is structured in a way that she can devote time to that. And that when folks bring those conversations to us, they know that we're responsive to them. And that, I think that's so much of our role. I don't want to speak entirely for John, but more and more that becomes, I think, part of a key aspect of our role, which is positioning people who have expertise and high level of ability to move the system among our administrative team and our faculty in ways that they have the ability to do it, right? That we can clear out some of the other things that they may be doing, taking that work on ourselves, or finding other aspects of the system that can handle that, so that they're then able to move that forward. We have several members of the faculty who we engage with regularly on this topic, who feel passionately about it. And so part of their ask is, how can I be freed up sometimes to provide leadership here? Right. So that's in my mind, that's where our roles become really critical, and allowing them the freedom to operate around work that's important to them.
Okay.
So if I can follow up on that.
Yeah, and then I have a related question.
Yeah, because I'm talking about resources.
Mhm.
Thinking about, a number of school districts have more structured resources to deal with kinds of issues than on the convention. We don't have that, and Rachel, with all of her other responsibilities, can be torn in different directions. And even those staff members, faculty members, et cetera, who, as you say, are passionate, may be torn. So I'm just in time, and so I'm wondering, and this is really not a goal question as much as it is a budget question for next year, be thinking about, expect an answer now, what kind of resources we may be asked to provide or desire to provide in order to move that work forward.
Yeah, and sometimes that, you know, there are times when we're approached with conversations about, can we create a director of X, right? Or can we create an assistant director of Y? And so typically those conversations aren't ones that are able to go too far. And we're not looking to create more administrative positions in the system, but when we're able to say, all right, that is something we can't necessarily do in the short term, but here's how we can think through with you as faculty members or as other members of the staff, ways for you to go to experience new learning in this area that aligns with your interest, and then have an opportunity for us to compensate you through time and finances to do planning and then implementation of your new learning. I'm thinking of a couple of examples from conference days last year where members of the faculty went, experienced new learning, came back, proposed to us what we thought was a really thought out plan, and then engaged in learning that involves scores of the staff, right? And so while they aren't a director of something by name, that's the work, right? That's how we engage in conversations that grow us. And sometimes it isn't a six-figure salary, it's some release time, it's support and direction from decision makers in the district office and otherwise, and it's doesn't have to be a high level of compensation, but it's compensation for the time and the talent that they put into sharing these things. And then it's an investment of our time in saying, let's think through what the feedback is and what the next steps are. And so I think that's, in a system like ours, especially of our size, that's how we grow work like this in a grassroots way.
Yeah, so my follow-up question, which I think that actually answers a lot, and it's helpful thinking, and I think that was also a great question to raise. One of the things you mentioned is also in terms of communications, because that's an area of particular interest to many of us. This question, you told us about your meetings with the PTA and SEPTA leaders to sort of help them understand better the vision map for the district, which I think is really great. And I'm curious if you have sort of had any initial thoughts about this point about community forums regarding the vision map and related work, also about what that related work might be.
So yeah, you know, I'm a fan of the World Cafe protocol kind of opportunities, and I think it's something we haven't done here, at least in the time that I've been here. And I think that, you know, the moment is right for those kinds of discussions again, to bring together folks from across the community and say, you know, listen, we have an opportunity here, right? That everybody, as I said earlier, everyone has a shared experience of having been through school. And so we want to engage with the community and ask them some important questions about what school can be. Right? And so we'll need to make sure that we have structures in place there to engage large swaths of our community, and not just, you know, the same wonderful and well-intended folks, but the same folks that we normally would see in most settings. I think that's got to be part of our focus, is how are we hearing from other voices. And I think there are some ways digitally to do that, but I think this is a moment when in-person, face-to-face community discussion needs to be a priority.
Just one other thing I was going to add, which really comes to communication. What you described, I understand completely about the work in what Anamika asked about. I think there may be somewhat lack of communication to the community about what's going on, because we've had in the past a culture of respect, right, and the equity stakeholder task force. And I think there are members in the community who probably say, well, okay, we're not doing anything. We had all this stuff, we got a report, we said nice things, and well, nothing's happening. So I think, and I could sense, and I would be in agreement, is that
You've articulated it very well, Neil.
explaining to the community and currently what we're doing and what we're doing that it's not doctrine.
Right.
It's not a doctrinaire program, but it is something that relates to social emotional health, relates to development of collaboration and relationships, develops to a lot to what the vision map is about. People can make
Yeah, and we're at the early stages, right? Very early stages of communication about the vision map, but part of it is, and many folks who are in this room were a part of creating it, right? There were underpinnings of that involve collaboration, that involve equity, that involve belonging, that involve academic excellence, that involve, future thinking around what school can be. All of those are foundational and part of the DNA of what the vision is. And there were a lot of discussions about whether or not to call some of those things out specifically, or to say that this is the broadest vision that we think encapsulates all of those things for the school experience for everyone who's a part of it. So, this is not a short-term vision or communications plan. This is about repetition over the course of months and years. And it's not something that will ever be finished, right? And it's certainly not finished now, both as a product or a vision. And I think that's part of what is so exciting and interesting to me is the ongoing nature of it, right? There is no point at which we say we're done, right? This is, we continually move the goalpost, because I think it is that aspiration.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Presenting to us. And I'm going to turn it over actually to Amelia, who was able to join us after her volleyball game. Congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
And I know you wanted to just give us a quick update of some things that have been going on recently.
Yeah, so we, this weekend we had the Heritage Apron Run and many of our students volunteered, including both the boys and girls volleyball team and cheer team, as well as many other members of the community. And we had a very successful homecoming week, and we want to give a big shout out to the Booster Club as they were able to come and support all of our athletes and sell merch and bring up the school spirit a little bit. Boys soccer, boys volleyball, and girls tennis were all able to secure league titles. Parent-teacher conferences for the high school are coming up at the end of the first quarter, and signups have begun, as well as PVC's parent-teacher conferences on the 24th. And then this morning at the SFC meeting, a few people from the PTSA came to talk with us about building school culture and what we can do to involve the students more. We want to build a stronger community between both groups inside and outside of school.
All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. We will now move into new business. Recommended action that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of Triton Construction and KG&D Architects, PC, awards the infrared and mega testing project to High Voltage Maintenance Corp. In the amount of $58,650, inclusive of $6,000 in allowances for all 4 buildings.
So moved.
Second.
On the question?
Just to understand, this is, am I correct in understanding that this is not in response to any particular detected risk, but is more preventative?
Yeah, so the mega testing tests the resistance, so it's more for capacity, to test the electrical and mechanical capacity. And the infrared checks the safety of our equipment. So it's basically looking at our equipment, is it safe? What is the capacity, so that when we add equipment on, whether it's HVAC equipment, electrical outlets, pumps, etc., that we know that the insulation resistance is sufficient and has the capability to provide additional electricity.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Recommended action that the Board of Education of the Croton Harmon Union Free School District, I'm just gonna add that in there, Hereby authorizes retaining Jacqueline Meyer to provide ongoing support related to the operations of the Assistant Superintendent's Office on an as-needed basis, not to exceed a total of 10 days at a rate of $301.38 per day, commencing on October 20th, 2023.
So move.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose, abstain, motion carries. We'll now move into ongoing business. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the Bradhurst change orders for the district-wide drainage capital reserve 2013 projects 01-031 and 03-032.
So move.
Second.
On the question?
I asked that.
Oh, I was gonna say. Thank you for asking that earlier. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstain, motion carries. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the armor type change orders for the district office and CET groupings. That is 10-007 and 03-033.
So.
Second.
Well, that Omar and then Neil. On the question?
I will just point out, since we were likely to see change orders in the future, that the AIA document doesn't list positive change orders with a plus and a negative change order with a minus. They changed the word from increase to decrease.
Yes.
So always look at that word. So the armor tight is actually a decrease, but it's not reflected as a negative amount.
Well, I understood from the answer we got for the Bradhurst. Was also a credit.
But Bradhurst had credits within that
Okay.
change order, but overall, because of
Offset the
the
total increase.
offset
Okay.
the rock allowance.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose, abstain, motion carries. We'll now move into instructional personnel. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the 2023-2024 co-curricular appointments for Croton Harmon High School as presented.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose, abstain, motion carries. All right, and then 5.2, recommended action that the Board of Education approves the 2023-2024 co-curricular appointments for Croton Harmon High School as presented.
So move.
Second.
On the question? All in favor? Aye. Oppose, abstain,
Abstain.
motion passed. All right, we will now move into the consent agenda. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the consent agenda items.
So move.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose, abstain, motion carries. All right, we will now, that point, recommended action that the Board of Education adjourn at 9:15 p.m.
So moved.
I was gonna say, you guys want to stick around?
We don't want to go.
Josh, move that?
Yeah.
Theo,
second.
you second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Oppose, abstain, motion carries. All right, thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah.
Have a lovely evening.